Come on in, welcome to Idled Out, where we talk all things Survivor. My name is Luke, and today we're ranking every tribal division theme ever on Survivor. Used in roughly 1/4 of seasons, separating tribes by X or Y quality is a quick and easy way to divide players in a fun manner that makes remembering who's on what tribe much easier for the audience. Initially deployed in Season 6, tribal divisions along demographic lines were a hallmark of late Classic Era through Golden Era Survivor, with players often divided along the lines you'd fill out on a census form like age or gender. They finally hope to definitively answer that age-old playground question: do boys rule and girls drool, or do girls rule and boys drool? Survivor again became enamored with tribal divisions in the 30s, necessitated by them permanently setting up shop in Fiji, this time taking a more abstract approach to dividing players, now often dividing them along specific qualities they embody as human beings instead. These divisions were largely successful and super fun, although they hit a point of diminishing returns. I'll be ranking the tribe division themes both as a concept as well as for how they were executed and their impact on the storytelling of the season as well. This isn't a ranking of the seasons, just how good the tribal division theme is. Finally, I'm only including seasons where tribes were pre-sorted into a tribe based on an existing quality the players already had, so seasons where there was a theme but divisions were arbitrary, like Fiji, won't be counted. So, which tribal divisions were the best and which were the worst? Let's find out. All that said, let's take a look at my ranking of every tribal division theme in Survivor history. At number 10 is... dividing tribes by race, used only once in Survivor Cook Islands. This is Survivor taking its whole social experiment thing too far. This is the only tribal division that lost the show sponsors and put its continued existence in jeopardy. The 20 players were divided into 4 tribes: a tribe of African Americans, Asian Americans, Latinos, and Caucasians. And although the tribes were swapped in episode 3 and new alliances were formed along non-race lines, it's still a fever dream that this was not only pitched as a theme, but approved by the top brass at CBS. Nowadays, you'd literally be fired on the spot for suggesting this. 2006, you crazy! Unfortunately, the division by race created an unfair burden on this cast to represent their particular ethnic group, rather than to just play the game. Something that is explained in confessionals in episode 1 by like half the players. On the plus side, this division injected some much-needed racial diversity into the show, and the tribes were shuffled in episode 3, so the race wars dynamic was put to bed early on. On the downside, pitting races against one another is historically not a super cool idea. At number 9 is dividing players as heroes, healers, and hustlers, as seen in Survivor Heroes versus Healers versus Hustlers. This is the other tribal division that I think is just outright bad. Survivor casting in the 30s worked on a cast first and craft a theme later basis. This is the best way to do that. You get the best possible cast that way, but it's also how you end up with themes like this. I don't have to tell you that this is completely nonsensical. What even is this? Blank v blank themes should be something familiar to the audience. These are just 3 alliterative words pulled out of a hat. They really try hard to make the divisions work, explaining that heroes are duty-bound, healers seek to heal others, and hustlers have strong work ethic. But why are these groups fighting against each other anyway? Isn't the line between hero and healer like razor thin? Why do the first 2 sound like positive qualities, and then hustler sounds like a tribe where my wallet is gonna get stolen? This tribal division theme is just a confused, head-scratching mess, unfortunately hampering a season that I think is pretty solid Survivor right out of the gate. I mean, imagine telling someone to watch Survivor and then they see that the theme is heroes versus healers versus hustlers. No one out there is like, ooh, I'm a total healer, I gotta see if I stomp those heroes and hustlers. They probably should have just hired some hustlers to come up with a new theme. At number 8 is pitting a tribe of returning players against a tribe of new ones. as seen in Survivor Micronesia, Survivor Karamoan, and Survivor Blood vs. Water. The first two appearances of this theme were in a fans versus favorites format, and the third pit returning players against a tribe of their loved ones. My biggest problem with returning players playing against newbies is the inherent advantage returning players have over new ones, proven by the fact that in all 3 seasons, the returning players steamroll the newbies pre-swap. In Micronesia, it seems like the fans were almost intended to be cannon fodder for the favorites. Post-swap, the fans were sometimes blinded by playing with their favorite survivors, making game-ending blunders they might not have made in a different situation. Thankfully, Survivor Karamoan corrected this by not casting real fans or real favorites. Blood vs. Water is a big step up in the format, pitting returning players against their loved ones. While the new players were still undoubtedly at a disadvantage, the Blood vs. Water twist made for intricate tribal dynamics with strong emotional payoff after almost every vote, so I'll give it credit there. The fact is, returning players will always have the advantage, and sometimes that's by design. The newbies got steamrolled all 3 times, so honestly, Survivor, why even go through the song and dance of having real people anyway? Just put like 10 sock puppets out there for the favorites to demolish. You know, still a more dynamic group than the Karamoan fans. At number 7 is dividing tribes by age and gender, as seen in Survivor Exile Island. We'll get to the seasons divided by age or gender soon, but for me, splitting the tribes into a tribe of younger women, younger men, and older men didn't really add any extra insight or social commentary than what we'd already gotten in Survivor's 2 previous seasons, divided along gender lines only. Add to the fact that these divisions by age are also dubious at best, with several members of the quote-unquote older tribe being in their early to mid-30s, and we have a tribe division that can't even commit to itself. Survivor clearly did not believe in these divisions. They abolished the 4-person tribes after a single round, the quickest tribe swap in Survivor history, proving to me that dividing by age and gender was more marketing gimmick than social experiment. It's hard to feel much of anything about these particular divisions though, since the tribes were reshuffled so quickly, and no point is really made good or bad about age or gender dynamics. In fact, the only social commentary is an unwitting one from the show itself. Bobby on the younger men's tribe and Melinda on the older women's tribe are both 32 years old. Very interesting, Survivor. I mean, to be fair, I guess she is 3 months older. At number 6 is dividing tribes by gender, seen 3 times in Survivor Amazon, Survivor Vanuatu, and Survivor One World. This was Survivor's first tribal division, and in the early days of the show, it seemed inevitable that they would divide tribes along this line at some point. And they did, quickly. Survivor first divided tribes along gender lines in Season 6, and that proved to be so popular that they went back to that well just a few seasons later in Season 9. It's interesting to see how the same exact theme can produce 2 wildly different tones just a few seasons apart. Amazon is an insanely horny season. Every guy not named Butch or Matt instantly reverts into a 13-year-old when they're left to their own devices, talking about how hot the girls are, which girls are the hottest, and what hot things the hot girls are probably doing hotly right now. Vanuatu, by contrast, is a mature season with a more nuanced look at gender dynamics beyond men like Booba. It almost seems like a direct response to the frattiness of Amazon. Of course, it helps that the gender divide defines the whole season in a way that it doesn't for Amazon, with the main storyline being the rise and fall of an all-women's alliance spearheaded by one of Survivor's most complex villains ever, feminist lesbian Amy, who wanted a woman to win at all costs. It's not by coincidence that Amy was on the season divided by gender. Then there's little old Survivor One World, where the gender divide was more out of necessity due to the season's big twist where every player lived on the same beach, but on separate tribes. Having their tribe designation be easily identifiable was of critical importance here. Dividing by gender is a mixed bag for me. At its best, it genuinely has something to say, but too easily lends itself to crude stereotypes and occasionally inappropriate comments for me to really get on board with it too much. I'm sorry, but I can only listen to the young Amazon guys slobber over Jenna, Heidi, and Shauna so much before it gets tiring. Stop making me want to hear from Butch. At number 5 is Dividing by Age, seen in Survivor Nicaragua and Survivor Millennials versus Gen X. These two seasons took a slightly different approach to separating the generations. Nicaragua's cast was a tribe of 30 and unders and a tribe of 40 and olders, and Millennials versus Gen X was a battle between Millennials and Gen Xers. But the end result is basically the same, so I'm lumping them together. The biggest concern with an age-divided season for me is the obvious physical imbalance, but genuine props to Survivor for balancing the game properly so the tribe with fewer working knees doesn't get rolled. This is apparent in Nicaragua especially, with the Medallion of Power in play and far less physical challenges than usual, both intended to give the older Espada tribe a fighting chance. If anything, more physical challenges and less communication-based ones would have helped Espada. Tyrone can hard carry this tribe solo, and it wasn't the physicality of the challenges that caused the older tribe to get picked off. It was their massive egos and petty interpersonal conflicts. Just put two old guys on the same tribe with the same name or stupid nickname and watch the sparks fly. It's a well Survivor would go to, again. As for the theme's impact on the seasons themselves, it's pretty minimal outside of the expected age-related trash talk. Good luck winning a challenge. Yeah, well, good luck buying a home. Overall, it's a solid tribe division that gets more older players on the show, and age diversity on Survivor is something I'm always a big fan of. Oh, and I'd be remiss if I didn't at least mention Jeff's unhinged questions in Millennials vs. Gen X, where he illustrates the generational gap by asking how each group texts the word you. Y-O-U or just the letter U? Wow, we're really going deep on this one, aren't we? At number 4 is designating players as underdogs or overachievers, as seen in Survivor David versus Goliath. Now we're in genuinely great theme territory. The last Tribal Division theme season we're likely to see for a while, David vs. Goliath is an inspired and clever theme that pits a tribe of plucky blue-collar workers and lovable geeks against Herculean supermen and superwomen, business leaders, and expert negotiators. I've got to give Survivor props for the casting in this particular season. The theme doesn't work if the physical difference isn't there, and just sizing these two tribes up gives us the impression that the deck is already stacked against the Davids from the very beginning. The Goliaths truly look imposing, the normal-sized David tribe looking minuscule in comparison. There's certainly no mistaking which tribe is which here, but just in case you get confused, the David tribe is the one with a guy literally named Davy on it. My only criticism of this theme is that it quite clearly makes one tribe more rootable than the other right out of the gate. The Davids are portrayed as the sympathetic underdogs before they even set foot on the mat on day one. That actually did manifest itself in the game, too. I think at least some of the Goliath-strong sentiment that emerged post-merge was a result of them believing, true or not, that if a David got to the end, they'd automatically win just because of their story. Still, that's a bit nitpicky. David vs. Goliath is a simple, eye-catching theme, exceptionally fulfilled by its stellar cast, and literally plays out exactly like the Bible story, which is its namesake. Or maybe it didn't, I don't know. I never read that. At number 3 is dividing returnees into tribes of heroes and villains, as seen in Survivor Heroes vs. Villains. This was the first ever blank versus blank themed season, not based on some physical quality, and they really got it right the first time. By season 20, we were due for another All-Stars season, but they'd kinda already had a season called Survivor All-Stars, you know? So they instead divided their cast of 20 into a tribe of heroes and a tribe of villains. At its core, the theme boils down the story into what we already love about Survivor, finding out what happens when larger-than-life heroes we love to love take on the scheming, duplicitous villains we love to hate. The storytelling is just incredibly solid, too. The heroes go from noble, principled hard workers to scheming backstabbers, courtesy of their early game losing streak, and once they get their mojo back, they're ultimately undone by naively misplacing their trust. The villains start out as smack-talking schemers, only to slowly but surely loyally unite under the leadership of Boston Rob, only for that to unravel at the hands of the only villain who sticks to his villainous roots. I know these things, happened in real life, but the way in which the story is told and portrayed is just incredibly solid. Even in a vacuum though, it's just a great theme that gives the opportunity for archetypes to be reinforced or subverted. Finally, you've got to give credit to casting for finding players who truly embody the theme. Game changers, this ain't. Everyone fits their role to a T, and there's really only one person whose casting doesn't quite gel for me. An alleged hero, yet in her first season she had a sketchy showmance and kind of flipped on, you could even say mutinied, on all of her allies. That's right, sugar. At number 2 is dividing by occupation, as seen in Survivor Worlds Apart. This season had 3 tribes of 6, separated into a tribe of white-collar workers, blue-collar workers, and no-collar workers, aka free and/or fun-employed spirits. I love how the theme informs the vibe of each tribe, and everyone proudly buys into their particular tribal identity. The blue-collar tribe, for example, values hard work, the white-collars value leadership and delegation, and the no-collars value, being naked? Even if it's a little cheesy, I think the no-collar tribe provides a good balance to the other two, and prevents the theme from devolving into a preachy binary of the noble blue-collar versus the evil white-collar, which very easily could have been the case. Instead, it forces a closer examination of what each particular collar values, good and bad. Unfortunately, the casting doesn't quite live up to the promise of its theme for me. Blue collar should be the likable group, but they're the least likable. No collar is a bizarre mix of people who fit the tribe theme perfectly and people who are wildly out of place. I mean, come on now, his collar is right there. Major props to the white collar tribe casting though. It is low-key one of the most perfectly cast themed tribes ever. 2 transparently shady corporate ladder climbers, 2 smug yet aloof left coast superfans, and 2 likable enough players in the middle to balance this tribe out. It's a perfectly composed tribe. I do think this work-divided tribal division is quite great on its own, but unfortunately the season attached just doesn't really do it for me, with too many unlikable people going too far, both in the game and in their comments to others. Look man, all I'm asking is if you're gonna be needlessly cruel to someone on TV, you could at least be charismatic about it. At number 1, the greatest Survivor tribal division theme of all time is brains versus brawn versus beauty, seen in Survivor Cagayan and Survivor Co. Wrong. This is how you divide tribes along personal qualities. It's the ideal theme because the players can play to their particular tribe designation, but it's impossible to let being called brainy, brawny, or beautiful truly go to your head because it's such a superficial designation that many of the players could realistically fit into 2 or even all 3 categories. So it allows the players to have fun with their tribe designation, but no one's going to take their role as a brain, brawn, or beauty so seriously that it inflates their ego. Well, almost no one. It's really fun watching these 2 seasons back to back and seeing how the same theme can play out to different results with separate casts. The brash, strength-obsessed bravado of Brawn tribe leaders Jason and Scott in Co. Wrong is quite clearly much different from the humility and gentleness of Wu and Cliff in Cagayan. The brains are underdogs both times, but in Cagayan, they're a complete train wreck of egos and personality clashes. And in Co. Wrong, they're much more sympathetic. Aubrey in particular. The only tribe in all 3 seasons which really gets the short end of the developmental stick is the beauty tribe in Cagayan, which is largely portrayed stereotypically, whether that's as superficial, airheaded, or conceited. But enough about Morgan. Brain versus brawn versus beauty works as a theme because it is simple, easy to understand, and just plain fun. It gets the audience on board immediately. It is Survivor's greatest tribal division theme ever. Ah, great, another thing that will go to Morgan's head. Got nothing else for you. If you want to be my hero, healer, and hustler all in one, like and subscribe, and I'll get you more Survivor content just like this. Until next time, don't get idled out.